I can have someone as uneducated and lowly like you fired any time I want. Keep that in mind at the headquarters. Emily, who bosses around a place as the department head, hurled such harsh threats at me. The next day, President Johnson visited my department on an internal inspection. First and foremost, Emily greeted President Johnson with an almost servile eagerness. I felt like throwing up at the sight of Emily's flirty demeanor, so different from the tyrannical and arrogant face she shows to subordinates. But then the next moment, President Johnson spotted me and walked over to say something. The words he greeted me with, and then the words that continued, were utterly unexpected. Emily's eyes widened in shock, and her face turned deathly pale in an instant. I am Michael Sanders. At 28, I'm still quite nervous. This is a lesson I've learned through the experiences of my youth, which I'd like to share with you. I was born as an only child. My father ran his own company, and my mother was raised like a princess. In my early years, we were fairly well off. My father was too busy with his business to play with me, but I remember him being very affectionate when he was around. My mother, a full-time homemaker, was gentle and kind, and I was raised in a calm and peaceful atmosphere. In my faint childhood memories, we had a maid. The maid and my mother often took me to the local zoo or amusement park. These peaceful and elegant days continued until I started kindergarten. But one day during my kindergarten years, the company car carrying my father was involved in a head-on collision with a large truck. The driver died instantly, and my father, rushed to the hospital in critical condition, was barely hanging on to life. After the emergency treatment, my father somehow managed to cling to life, but remained in a critical condition, teetering on the edge between life and death for a long time. Over a month passed before his condition finally stabilized. However, he ended up almost completely bedridden and paralyzed on one side of his body. Inevitably, my father could no longer work and was forced into retirement. My father had built his company from scratch and was expanding it rapidly, so the regrets he must have felt at that moment are beyond comprehension. From then on, my father took on a tedious rehabilitation process, trying to improve his condition as much as possible at home. My father needed assistance, so my mother hired helpers for everything, which must have been hard for him. But he never complained or showed weakness. Our family's lifestyle was now sustained by my father's savings and some assets my mother raised as a princess and physically frail couldn't work outside while taking care of my father. So, we had to manage with what we had. Don't worry, we have enough savings and assets to keep us going for a while. Don't worry about money, my father reassured us, struggling to articulate his words. In this situation, I started elementary school and eventually became a middle schooler. Being fast on my feet, I excelled as a sprinter on the track team. In middle school, with grades in the top 10 of my class, I went on to a public high school with the highest academic standards in our district. However, I had given up on the idea of going to college by the time I was in my first year of high school. I knew our family's finances, which had been maintained by depleting savings and assets since my elementary school days, were becoming strained. While we had enough for our daily lives, my father's medical expenses took a significant toll each year, and we needed to prioritize those funds. I don't want to go to college. I'm tired of studying. Even though it was a lie, I knew that if I didn't say something like that, my parents would feel guilty for not being able to send their son to college. As a high school student, I didn't join any clubs. Instead, I worked part-time jobs to earn my allowance and cover school expenses. I wanted to lessen the burden on my family's finances. By my senior year, while everyone else in my honors class was preparing for college entrance exams, I was the only one starting to search for a job. Since going to college was the norm for everyone, my teachers weren't very helpful with my job. They did write the recommendation letters I asked for, but for the most part, I had to manage all the inquiries and arrangements with companies on my own. As a result, I received a job offer from a branch of a certain company I had hoped to join for specific reasons. Upon graduating from high school, I began working at this company as a member of the workforce. The company, though a branch of a certain corporation, was essentially treated like a subsidiary, positioned at the bottom of the group's hierarchy. During the job hunt, I had wanted to apply to the headquarters, but since the requirements stated educational background, college degree or higher, the only position available to me was at this branch. However, the branch where I was hired had good interpersonal relationships, and there was no enforced overtime work or other negative aspects, so I quickly grew to like my workplace. My job initially focused on route sales, but as I gained experience in my second and third years, I had more freedom to develop original products and explore new sales channels. As I continued to work, I found my job increasingly enjoyable and felt motivated. However, as I entered my fourth year at the company, an element began to disrupt the good atmosphere. An employee from the headquarters started to come to our branch for inspection, acting like an auditor. Although the inspection itself wasn't a bad thing, the attitude of this employee from the headquarters was horrendous, to say the least. This employee, Emily, came to our branch regularly for inspections. She was in her mid to late 20s, a few years older than me. Emily was tall, with a model-like figure, stunningly beautiful, and an elite graduate from a top university. Originally working for a foreign consulting firm right after graduating from college, Emily was headhunted to work at our headquarters. Known for her sharp and capable work ethic, despite her actress-level beauty, Emily had a cold, strong-willed personality with an incredibly high pride. "It's like God has made winners like me, blessed with both brains and beauty, and losers like you who don't have anything," Emily often said. Emily had a strong sense of superiority as an elite and habitually looked down on employees of our branch, which she considered the bottom of the group, as if we were mere insects. Especially after learning that I only had a high school diploma, she openly mocked me. "So, Michael, you're just a lowly high school graduate. I saw your resume. You went to a fairly decent public high school with a high deviation score. You must have been a real failure there." She ridiculed me mercilessly. Each time Emily insulted or slandered me, I felt deeply hurt inside, but I endured it. After all, Emily was sent from the headquarters. If I reacted to Emily's provocations and responded angrily, it could lead to repercussions for our company as a subsidiary. Knowing this, we employees had no choice but to endure Emily's mean-spirited harassment. Then one day, I was headed to work early in the morning, and on my way to the station, I encountered something unexpected. An elderly woman had collapsed on the side of the road, perhaps due to the morning rush or general apathy. No one stopped to help the fallen elderly woman. I immediately rushed to her side and asked, "Are you okay? What happened?" The elderly woman had been lying on the ground in pain with her eyes closed, and she opened her eyes in response to my voice. Weakly, she replied, "Oh, I suddenly felt dizzy and must have passed out on the street." After helping the elderly woman to her feet, she managed to stand up. Still concerned, I asked the elderly woman, "Would you like to go to the hospital?" Then she said, "No, let me contact my family first." So, I used her phone to call her family and explain the situation. While waiting with the elderly woman, a taxi arrived carrying a middle-aged woman claiming to be her family member. I was relieved and handed the elderly woman over to her family. Checking the time, I realized I was significantly late, totally late. I contacted my company to explain the situation and let them know I would be late, then headed back to the station. Upon arriving at work about 2 hours late, I was met by Emily, who had come from the headquarters. "Hey, Mr. L, educated and good-for-nothing guy, what time do you think it is? If you're going to be useless, at least be punctual. Trash will always be trash," Emily scolded me without even asking for an explanation. After that, Emily continued to torment me with her nasty remarks, but I gritted my teeth and endured it. I just have to endure. This woman is trying to provoke me on purpose to bring down this department. I fought to myself, continuing my work patiently. That afternoon, while still bearing the brunt of my hardships, I received a phone call from an unexpected person. It was a call I could never have anticipated. Months passed, and a new fiscal year began. I was transferred from the branch I had worked at since joining the company. I had been reassigned to work at the headquarters. As I made my rounds greeting people in the department I was assigned to at the headquarters, I happened to witness a scene. Emily was scolding her subordinates with an arrogant attitude. Emily's title was the office manager of this office floor, which included the department I was assigned to. I discreetly observed her reprimanding her subordinates and later interviewed them and others around the office after she left. It turned out that Emily was notorious at the headquarters for her arrogant attitude towards her subordinates and her relentless pursuit of even the smallest mistakes, resulting in a very poor reputation. Most of her subordinates were stressed and harbored discontent. I returned to my assigned department and was working when Emily, who had business with the section chief, came in and spotted me. "Why is a useless employee from a bottom-tier branch here at the headquarters?" she bluntly asked. I respectfully reiterated my reason for being at the headquarters to Emily. "I've been transferred here starting this month as per the headquarters orders." Emily reacted with exaggerated disbelief, saying, "You're just a high school graduate, right? You're supposed to have a college degree to work at the headquarters. How did someone like you get transferred here?" Unbelievable, and reluctantly accepted the fact. However, things got worse from there. From that day on, Emily started treating me as if I were one of her subordinates. She would demeaningly call me, "Hey, undereducated guy," or "Mr. High School Diploma," and started dumping menial tasks on me like making coffee or filing documents. At times, she even ordered me to clean the women's restroom. It was a clear act of harassment. Eventually, Emily started assigning me chores even during my lunch breaks. I refused, which seemed to hurt her pride, and she left with a harsh parting shot. "I can have someone as uneducated and lowly as you fired any time I want. Keep that in mind." Watching her walk away, I muttered to myself, it might be time to make a move, and made a call to someone. The next day, President Johnson of the company, claiming to be on an inspection tour, came to the floor where my department was located. Emily was the first to obsequiously greet him, her usual domineering attitude replaced with an insincere charm that almost made me nauseous. She's like a person with a double personality, I thought, disgusted by her two-faced behavior. Emily tried to curry favor with Mr. Johnson. "Yesterday, I visited your office, but it seemed you were on a call, and we couldn't speak. I've noticed you often giving work instructions or engaging in negotiations over the phone recently, and I truly admire your dedication to work. I hope to emulate that as well." Despite her fawning over Mr. Johnson, he soon spotted me and approached to greet me warmly. "Mr. Michael Sanders, the new president. We've spoken on the phone several times, but this is our first face-to-face meeting." "Welcome to the headquarters," I responded. "Thank you. I've had the chance to observe everyone's hard work here since yesterday. I look forward to working with all of you." Upon hearing our exchange, Emily's face turned ashen. "New president? What do you mean, this high school graduate?" She stammered in disbelief. Mr. Johnson frowned at her interjection and sternly reprimanded her. "Emily, watch your language." He then proceeded to explain to us the surprising truths. This company was originally founded by my father due to a traffic accident that left him severely disabled. Mr. Johnson took over his duties. I was placed in a branch for training to assess my abilities as the founder's son. Mr. Johnson carefully explained these surprising truths, which were news to everyone except me. Emily, looking more shocked than anyone, was still not convinced by my sudden appointment as the new president and protested. "Even if that's the case, doesn't it seem odd? This is a large corporation with many branches and subsidiaries. Just because he's the founder's son, Handing over the presidency to someone who hasn't even graduated from college is absurd enough. Emily, your discriminatory insults could constitute slander. Show some respect, Mr. Johnson scolded her firmly. He then calmly added more details. He explained that he had made the decision considering my character. The elderly lady I helped during my commute while at the branch was actually Mr. Johnson's mother. Upon learning this fact, he reached out to my father. Then the details of how my character and capabilities were reevaluated, leading to the offer of the presidency, were thoroughly explained to both Emily and the other employees. According to Mr. Johnson, the board of directors and executive committee had already unanimously approved my appointment as the new president, with only the formal announcement at the shareholders' meeting remaining. Hearing this, Emily stood frozen in shock, while the rest of the employees erupted into applause. They congratulated me, saying, "Congratulations on your new appointment as president," and "We're looking forward to working with you, President Sanders." I thanked Mr. Johnson, and the employees then said, "Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well." Then I turned to Emily with a serious expression. Unable to rebut, I warned Emily, "I've compiled all the verbal abuse and harassment you've inflicted on your subordinates. Be aware that Mr. Johnson has been informed of your unacceptable behavior, so prepare yourself." Mr. Johnson added, "Emily, a special investigation team is currently examining your deplorable treatment of subordinates. You can expect severe disciplinary action to follow." Upon hearing that, Emily let out a loud "ah" as she looked up at the ceiling, then collapsed to the floor from her knees. Several weeks later, the punishment for Emily following the investigation report was announced. She was dismissed from her position as a disciplinary action. The investigation team detailed Emily's harassment of her subordinates and branch employees, which was found to be grossly abnormal and constituted severe violations of human rights. Furthermore, it was discovered that several individuals had resigned due to mental and physical health issues stemming from the harassment. Some of them are still unable to reintegrate into society due to the deep psychological scars inflicted by Emily. Emily had not physically assaulted anyone, but in terms of inflicting significant psychological harm, she was undeniably a criminal. Although Emily was dismissed and left the company, that was not the end. Victims of her cruel harassment, who had been forced to resign, filed lawsuits against Emily personally, demanding compensation for their suffering. As one person took legal action, other victims who had previously suffered in silence began to speak out, leading to multiple lawsuits against Emily and dragging her into a quagmire. This news eventually became a rumor and reached Emily's parents. They denounced her as a disgrace to the family and ultimately disowned her. Dismissed and with no income, Emily quickly depleted her savings and assets from her days as an elite employee and fell into debt due to legal and compensation expenses. Although she attempted to find employment, her reputation tarnished by the lawsuits related to her malicious harassment, she was rejected from elite positions. While there were some opportunities for lower-level positions or in small companies, her unyielding elite mentality and excessive pride led to repeated rejections during interviews. Once living in a luxurious high-rise condo, Emily was eventually forced to move to a cheap, run-down apartment. Now she lives in fear of debt collectors' knocks and threats, confined to her dilapidated apartment. Hearing this through the grapevine, I realized the truth of karma. Emily's current situation is dire, but I can't find it in me to feel sorry for her. After all, she inflicted far greater pain, humiliation, and bitterness on many vulnerable people. For the rest of her life, the only path left for her is to deeply reflect and live with the consequences of her actions. Each time I reflect on Emily's downfall, I use it as a moment to introspect and evaluate myself. Am I being harsh to anyone? Am I using words or actions that could hurt someone? Am I doing anything that could demotivate our employees? These questions serve as my motivation to always check that the environment at our organization allows everyone to work comfortably. Taking Emily's actions as a cautionary tale, I continue to strive for improvements in our company's environment, guided by the principle that one must not judge others based on their background, education, or personal likes and dislikes.